Recent research from McKinsey Digital identified 63 AI use cases in marketing that they estimate will generate $4.4 trillion in economic impact annually. It's no secret that AI's future impact is staggering, but today's reality fuels the illusion that every business must universally adapt or die. Here's the real. Us marketers are drowning in AI hype today. Tools promise everything, but they don't deliver meaningful returns. So how can you separate out real innovation from empty promises? I'm Benjamin Shapiro, and joining me today is Tom Chavez, a co-founding general partner at Superset. Tom has built and sold startups to some of the biggest tech companies in the world. And now he runs a venture studio that funds data-driven AI applications to deliver practical business results. And today, Tom and I are going to delve into what's real and what's not when it comes to AI's impact on marketing. Tom, welcome to the MarTech Podcast.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me, Ben.
Excited to have you on the show. It's an honor and a privilege. I said before, you've done some great things, started startups, sold them to big companies, and now you're passing it forward in your venture studio. You said something smart to me when we first met, was that you described the AI arms race as a head fake. So how do you view the landscape of AI software innovation today?
Yeah, I find it incredibly exciting, right? So it was funny that I was at a party recently, and there's a curmudgeon there who's talking about, this AI stuff, it's such a bunch of nonsense. It's just endless hype as far as the eye can see. And I found myself, putting the brakes on this and letting this person know, no, I've been at it for a while, and I've seen fads, and I've seen things that were never meant to be, right? In tech, we get very excited about new possibilities. That's why we love what we do. And some of those things never come to pass. AI is very real, very deeply rooted, and so certainly not a fad. On the other hand, and I think the reason I think of it as a head fake is that in this particular case, the hype is just hopelessly out of control, right? So we can hold this idea of the promise of AI without subscribing to all of the breathless assertions about artificial generalized intelligence, the AI fairy swooping down from the sky, to take care of everything, to do all of our thinking for us, to do all of the scut work that we don't want to handle anymore. I think that's wrong, right? And so my concern as everybody rushes into AI is that we just take a more balanced view. I think there's an equilibrium point here in the middle where it's possible to harness the potential of AI to radically transform what we're doing in the marketing realm, but with the view towards what I think of more as augmented intelligence. So AI, but let's have the A stand for augmented intelligence. And what I have in mind is this idea of putting the machines to work to make what modern marketers do cooler, better, faster, stronger. That's the premise.
I hear you. I agree and I disagree. I agree with the principle of augmented reality being the reality, right? I'm thinking about the stages of prepping for this interview. I'm using artificial intelligence to mine data sources that I know are important to marketers to figure out what is the most relevant so I can frame my questions. I did research on you, right? I analyzed my own tone. We created our copy for our thumbnails in advance and our titles for YouTube. We do all these different things in advance to get ready. It's amazing. It makes my whole job easier, and it augments the entire process. It is an external brain. And your argument for me to take the counterpoint is, well, but it's not going to be an AI fairy that drops down from above and hopefully not the Terminator to come and kill us all. But I do think that there are stages. There is an evolution here where we get to a point where actually that does become the case. And we are just so in the first inning of what's probably a 25-year rollout of the sort of manifestation of AI, in the same way that mobile technology is still rolling out. And the first wave of iPhone apps were groundbreaking, amazing, but Uber didn't come around till 10 years after the iPhone. So I hear you in the sense of like, it's not going to be life-changing, but I also want to say not going to be life-changing and take over everything now, but what's stopping it from getting to that point over the life cycle of the technology, which seems to be moving very quickly?
Good. So if we're talking about 25 years, Ben, I'm all the way with. It really comes down to the time horizon we're using to structure this conversation. I think certainly in 25 years, agentic AI will be doing the lion's share of the work that we think of in the context of modern marketing. No question. Is it going to happen next year? Is it going to happen within 5 years? I'm out of the business of trying to predict exactly when these things happen, but I do like to just in this moment, let's recall, you and I have been at this for a while. In the late 90s, I think it was 99 at the height of the dot-com bubble, there was this concept that Rogers and Peppers were putting forth called one-to-one marketing. Okay. The reality is if you've been in the boiler room of digital marketing, there's smidges of one-to-one marketing here and there, but it's really been one-to-many marketing, right? We do a lot of segmentation and cohort analysis and so on.
Hang on.
Yeah.
But aren't we getting to one-to-one marketing now? Like, weren't they just wrong about the time frame?
Good. So, and instructively, it's 26 years later, right? So
there you go.
If we're taking the long horizon, absolutely, these things unfold. By the way, I also want to say with AI, what used to happen in 9 months is unfolding in 9 days now. So that's why I stay out of the business of trying to predict exactly when. What I am proposing is that in the next 1 to 5 years, there will be transformative possibility, right, in the use of AI to remove so much of the scut work that modern marketers deal with, right, as they try to synthesize data from different sources and cobble it together into a picture of what actually worked with the last marketing campaign they launched. New techniques for experimentation, personalization, targeting, synthetic data. I'm really excited about those possibilities, but it's not going to blow up the entire apparatus. Yeah. I don't think in the next 1, 2 or
we've both been around for a little while, but not forever. But we've seen a couple of the cycles here, and I think it was, let's not go back to the invention of the telephone and the newspaper, but, we saw sort of the peak of television advertising, the rise of the connection of the world with digital marketing, the mobile marketing revolution, and this seems to be the next evolution. Are there common sort of stages that you've seen from some of the other changes in technology that have affected marketers?
Well, I think you have your thumb on so many of the most important ones, right? There was the movement to mobile. I'm thinking of my friend Greg Stewart, who started the Mobile Marketing Association, and now it's the Modern Marketers Association, because, as mobile just became part of marketing, right? Once upon a time, and you were there for it, there was a thing called online. Now it's just baking, right? So what part of marketing for the modern marketer is not mobile or multi-channel, multi-surface, and so on? But that was one big revolution. I think the movement to big data, we used to use that word, we don't use it anymore, but big data in the cloud, that was equally transformative, right? In my first startup, it used to take us literally 2 days to compute something equivalent to the calculation of a segment, an audience segment, in our second company that we used to do in about 7 minutes, right? So I've experienced those transformations myself. I think cloud and data was equally tectonic. AI is going to be at least as huge, right? And as you said a minute ago, we're in the first inning for sure, right?
Yeah.
So when I say it's a head fake, I'm not a Luddite about this stuff. I think it's really happening, and it's happening fast. I just reject the idea that all of the work that clever, creative marketers do is going to be immediately supplanted by machines. I think the claim on the table here is that the near-term possibility is about augmenting what marketers do, again, to make it cooler, better.
Yeah. The only argument I have, for expediting the pace. Like when we think about these sort of generational technology changes, 15 to 25 year rollout periods, and there's this incredible hype up front. Al Gore created the internet, whoever we're gonna credit for it, and then all of a sudden everybody's excited, and there's websites, and there's look, the first blogging platform, and AOL, right. and then it seems to the shine goes off the apple, and then it gets more into a slow, steady pace of innovation over time.
That's it.
And people don't think about it, and then it just kind of gets normalized into the way that we do things. Mobile is the one that I think that we saw most recently. Nobody thinks of their mobile strategy. They think of their strategy, and they have to have a mobile component to it because that's how the world works now.
Right.
With artificial intelligence, there is a notion of the AI does the work for you and gets smarter, and you can build faster. And so I guess the only question I have for you is, when you compare these 15 to 25 year segments, do you think the artificial intelligence technology wave happens faster? Does it consolidate faster? Do we peak hype and drop and then, go steady, or is it just straight up and to the right?
I think that it's everything. Like in my second company, and it wasn't just in the calculations and computations we were doing, things that used to take 2 days suddenly are happening in 7 minutes. The way the markets move, right? What used to take years would happen in quarter. As I moved from my first company in the early aughts to the second one in the 2010s. So we're dealing with that here today, and I think I don't know, is it 5x? Is it 10x? I don't know exactly, but it is up and to the right. To your point, Ben, it's exponential. It's way faster. In our studio, I work with our teams, and I always aim to be realistic, but a little bit unreasonable too, where I say, listen, if that thing that you thought you could do in 2 weeks, if you can do it in 2 days, just know that your competitors are getting it done in 2 days, right? Everything. The speed at which using these new vibe coding platforms and the way software is generated is fundamentally transformed, right? And I was, by the way, 6 to 9 months ago, I was a little skeptical, and then I wrapped my head around it, got closer to these developments. Holy guacamole. It's not a state of mind. So is it 10x faster? Is it 50x faster? I don't know, but it's a hell of a lot.
I broke my leg. And I spent the last 2 weeks on my back with ice packs on my leg in bed with my laptop, and I became an email deliverability expert. I have no idea why, when I had every excuse in the world that all I wanted to do was build infrastructure for my company, but somehow I got locked into talking to AI about how email deliverability works and how our infrastructure should change. And I basically went under the hood, ripped out the engine, rebuilt it, plopped it back in, and now we've solved all of our deliverability issues. I'm not an engineer. I'm not an email deliverability expert. And so to me, what's interesting for marketers, and maybe this goes beyond just our craft, is your ability to execute in areas where you are not a specialist is now possible. I guess that's the definition of vibe coding, but maybe it's vibe marketing. You can do so much more with very little knowledge of what you're actually doing.
I think I'm curious to know what systems or platforms you are using, but it sounds like you're doing some vibe coding and you're experimenting with the Lovable and Cursor and similar systems. I think vibe marketing is coming soon to a theater near you, right? It's unfolding now. My concern for the marketers who are letting somebody else do that, right? I love to ask people when I bump into them, like, how many times per day are you using an LLM to do anything, right? To get an answer that satisfies curiosity, or to get your job done, to rewrite some of your copy, to write some code, to get some data and move it into another system. How many times are you using it? And the folks that scare me the most are the ones who kind of fumble about, say, kind of still, not quite on it yet, or, I have some guys who do that for me, like, oh my God, dead man walking, right?
Oh,
you've got to be on these systems.
I use it for everything. I craft emails. I identify my tone. I use it to research my guests. Every single part of my world, I'm using it to diagnose whether the level of pain I'm having for my ankle is normal, so I don't have to harass my doctor. Like, I use it for everything. The scary thing is, I don't know if it's right. Like, I just changed all my email marketing infrastructure. Boy, I hope a consolidated DMARC is the way to go, and I don't, blow up all of my deliverability for all of my podcasts. But I guess we'll figure it out. Yeah. Well, so talk to me a little bit about some of the practical applications. How can marketers integrate AI into their existing workflows to maximize their efficiency?
Yeah, look, I think that where we live today, the highest, best use of these kinds of AI techniques is in dull, repetitive, high stakes, right? So in the context of marketing, and you mentioned it, listen, Nobel Prize winners and Pulitzer Prize winning authors are using AI to make their copy cooler, better. And that's what the Nobel Prize winners are doing. By the way, I'm using it a lot myself in the same way. Use the AI to write smarter, better copy. I think that there's a lot of opportunities in the analytic realm now to do what you might call AI BI, AI business intelligence, right? Mm-hmm. Marketers are exhausted by all of these damn dashboards, right? Hunting and pecking in yet another dashboard. I'm not, in Looker, Tableau, all of those systems were awesome for a long, long period of time. But what I see is a lot of exhaustion out there among marketers who have to hunt and peck through 25 screens to get the answer that they need. It's happening now. We're building it in my shop. A marketer can go now to what we call a chat with data interface and ask how many women between the ages of 25 and 35 who buy $250 of groceries or more a month use my coupon to buy my product in April. Boom, right away. No dashboards, you just give me the answer, right? That's what we love about, I like to point out, LLMs are obviously a technology transformation, but I also think it's a revolution in the interaction mechanism now that we have with machines. I don't want to go and poke all around your website. By the way, this is dangerous ground for publishers because too many people are just going straight to the answer engine. They don't want to go to a news source anymore. They just want the answer. So there we are again. All of us I think marketers have the opportunity to use these kinds of techniques to what they do in the realm of analytic, targeting and personalization. I like to point out, and I don't know why we don't pay more attention to this, Ben, but whenever it was 3-4 years ago, my chronology is always a little off. Meta's sole regulator, a company called Apple, decided that they were going to start asking all of us, do you want this app to track your movements around?
I heard about that.
Yeah, right? And so in one fell swoop, 70% of us said no. 70% of Meta's data used for targeting and personalization was vaporized. And their market cap nearly collapsed. It was a really scary thing. And there were a number of people who were foretelling the end of Meta. Well, I wasn't in the room, but I'm pretty sure there's a guy over there named Jan LeCun, who's the head of AI, probably went to Zuck and said, listen, man, I think we're okay. Well, believe it or not, 30% of the data we used to have is plenty good. Let's put the machines to work and create synthetic data with the same statistical properties as the broader data set and use that data for personalization and targeting.
Let's dive into synthetic data because I've had a couple of interviews where we've touched on it and haven't really gone deep. I get the general principle, which is you take an existing data set and you kind of extrapolate out what it might look like if the data set were bigger.
That's right.
But how is it accurate when you're taking, 100 million Facebook users, and you're saying, okay, well, what would this look like if there were 1 billion Facebook users? They're assuming what the other 900 million, whatever the number is, that's the delta, that they know what's going to happen without the actual interactions happen. It seems like it is predicting the future. Walk me through the how synthetic data actually works.
Yeah. So these techniques, by the way, predated LLM, and we should be clear about that. Some clever statisticians around Stanford and other places developed a set of techniques. Back in the day, there was something called boosting. Same idea. I'm going to take a small sample of data set. I'm going to recycle that data. I'm going to boost it in a way that maintains the statistical properties of the core data, the same means and modes and moments of a statistical distribution. So by kind of emulating the behavior of that data as if it were a larger data set, but in a way that retains the core statistical properties of the seed, right? You could get more data to feed, and this is where it became so powerful in the context of AI, because we know AI is hungry for data, right? You can take that much larger data set and not predict the motion of individual user, right? We're not at Minority Report yet, but you're able to predict with very high efficacy. That's probably coming. You could take me via my participation in a cohort of other users, look, walk, quack, talk like me, right? And give me more of what I want in that little moments in truth when there's something happening on a screen. And lo and behold, the combination of these tools for processing of very large data pipelines, coupled with the statistical properties that were invented a bit ago, it's this kind of grand synthesis of all of these techniques now to create the synthetic data that saved Meta's ass, as far as I'm concerned, right? Advantage Plus is the AI system that they use now for targeting and personalization. By the way, we use it in some of our companies. Inside my studio, it's magic. You can train those algos on, here are users who convert, here are users who bought my product. There's no way to decompile, right? That's what's scary and frustrating for some marketers. I can't tell you why, because it's deep in the third layer of a multi-layered neural network, and nobody knows why. Jeffrey Hinton, the inventor of all of these kinds of systems, will also tell you, we don't know why. I can't explain it, but it just effing works. And it's working at gigantic scale. Meta's numbers are evidence of that.
Yeah.
So when it comes to modern marketers, my point to them is, listen, this is the game. You can run, but you can't hide. This is the game. Meta, Google, with those kinds of AI-based systems for targeting and personalization, it worked. Do you really want to show up at a gunfight with a really sharp pencil? In other words, you got to play, don't play along, play the game. You've got first-party data, right? And it doesn't have to be as huge as you think it needed to be. In my last company, Ben, we had a very prominent digital marketing brand who came to us hanging their heads and said, well, we only have about 250,000 records in our loyalty database. And at that time, because we didn't have all of these new techniques and all of this new compute power, you had to go out to the open internet, buy a bunch of third-party data, which they didn't have a lot of confidence in. But that's you had to boost the signal from this, what felt like this meager data set, to go in and do personalization at scale. Well, now, 250,000 high quality, this is the triumph of small data now over big data. Small data that has a lot of fidelity, accuracy to it, is high octane fuel.
Yeah, I guess that's really the takeaway, is that small quality data can be synthesized to be more powerful than big dirty data.
And listen, I'll do a mea culpa here with you. Ben, in my last project, I used to sit on stages and I would throw about the 3.5 billion monthly uniques that my company's infrastructure was seeing and managing monthly. That's a huge number.
It's big.
What I didn't want to talk about was that a good 20% of it was bots. 15, 20% of it was fraud. And then a lot of it was just dirty, as you said, just dirty, unreliable data targeting, behind the targeting of those. Like, we're barely hitting the side of the bar.
Yeah.
With some of the uses of that data at that time. It's not like that anymore.
Yeah. Tom, I want to move on to your current role, understanding the funding phenomenon when it comes to artificial intelligence. Does AI integration create a competitive advantage in marketing? Like, how much of this is a hype cycle and how much of it is companies that are actually saying they use AI or invest in AI or have built AI actually increasing their valuations?
Oh, I think there are a number of companies who are talking the talk, and God bless them, they probably should, and they're seeing the results in their equity valuation as a result. Yank back the covers, and as you said, we're in the first inning still. So lots of pilots, right? Nobody's moving effectively yet, well, to our knowledge, from pilot to production. And that's okay. That's exactly how these kinds of technology cycles evolve. The marketers who aren't taking shots are the ones who worry me the most, right? Take some shots, invest in some experiments, and be zen-like about the fact that not all of them are going to work. But, oh my God, you got to get up, right? And start experiment.
I wonder about the positioning. The marketer in me was sitting here saying, you have to position yourself to be an AI-led whatever you are. We are an AI-led podcast production company. Now, I'm using ChatGPT and Claude and, zapping data around to, ask different queries. I'm not inventing anything proprietary. I'm just using the tools that are at my and everybody else's disposal. Does that mean that we're AI-led because it's integrated in what we do? Well, if it comes down to the valuation of our company, you bet your ass I'm saying we're AI-led, because I think that actually means something right now. What does actual AI-led mean?
Well, you can hate the game or you can hate the player. I urge everybody to hate the game, right? I mean, I think you're doing it exactly right. You are an AI-led studio, and that's what you do. Now, how do you pay that off? So you can take a few liberties, I guess, Ben, is the point at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to pay it off with real outcomes and real results through systematic investment in these kinds of techniques over time. There's going to be a big washout, right? We've all seen the trough. We enter the back end of the hype cycle, and we enter the disillusionment.
The bubble burst.
Where the bubble bursts, and everybody says, okay, you were high, and you were just, or you were lying, right? That's going to happen. But there will be a number of serious contenders and serious players who emerge. And they're going to win because they weren't afraid to take shots, in my view. And they were just learning from those experiments, and the ones that failed, at least as much from the ones that worked. And they're doing it faster than everybody else. So that's sort of the way I look at it. I'm excited by all of it, right? I think sometimes this technology stuff exhausts people, like, oh my God, you guys all get all worked up about these things, and then so much of it doesn't work. Yeah. But listen, the pieces that do are really consequential, right? So not a good time to be a curmudgeon. I think it's full of possibility these times.
I think the metaphor is you miss all the shots you don't take. I might be butchering that, but it sounds like it should ring true in this case, where if you're not leading with AI and flouting how you use it and how it is transforming your business, you are missing a great opportunity to position yourself to be a leader, an expert, and also there's a valuation wave that is very much tied to the hype cycle around AI. Tom, I want to move on to our lightning round, where I'm going to ask you a couple of marketing MarTech questions related to the AI arms race. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right, here's a good one.
Let's do it.
I want you to pick one. Would you rather invest in OpenAI, a monolithic AI platform, or YellowPad, an early-stage AI contract review legal tech startup?
I will not claim to be an expert on YellowPad, but I get the profile. And
the question is more about, are you betting on the platforms, or are you betting on the early stage verticalized startups?
I am betting with my own money and my time and my own sweat on the early stage startups. I think there's a lot of opportunity, particularly at the not so caffeinated valuation for those early stage startups, where if you're doing it right and picking intelligently, there's a lot of wealth to be created in that sector. I think the larger platforms, like, let's look at this, OpenAI, cost of electricity are just staggering. It's unbelievable what they've achieved. But the question for me is, how does OpenAI get to $10 billion or $20 billion in free cash? Right? Their current valuations, which continue to rise, are premised on something, free cash flow generation roughly along those lines. You look at it today, it's not clear how they get there, right? You have to it's a winner take all kind of game where they just have to keep betting that they can get enough money from the Saudis or whomever to keep it going, so that the other players get walked out. And that's happened before in tech, and maybe it'll happen here. But I'm not going to go and write a check at that valuation today, because I just don't. It's hard to see a path. I wish I'd gotten in 4 or 5 years ago. Absolutely, yes. But at today's stratospheric valuations, I don't get it.
Who can blame you for not giving your money to a nonprofit? All right, let's move on to our second question. As cookies disappear, are you prioritizing first-party data collection or diving into synthetic audience generation?
Yes, the short answer. So I have been ahead. I mistook clarity for proximity. One of those earlier companies, Crux. I'll do a quick little story. I was so adamant and passionate about the topic, about the possibility of first-party data, that we got into market with a data management platform that was weak when it came to turnkey integration of those third-party data sets. And we lost the deal because we weren't providing enough third-party data. So we learned quickly, fixed it, and the rest is history. The point is that there wasn't enough first-party data, and or the brands and publishers we were working with didn't have enough confidence in their own first-party data to drive, to really invest properly. I think that's evolved considerably in the last decade. So I see many more consumer-facing brands stewarding their first-party data and coming up with really clever techniques to generate and maintain first-party data. But it can't be one to the exclusion of the other, Ben, which is why I say yes.
Yeah.
I think you got to take that first-party data and use it.
Can lean into synthetic audience development without real first-party data, right? Garbage in, garbage out. And if you don't have the ability to find your first customers, capture data, fundamentally understand some of the why, then you can't amplify it effectively using the synthetic tool. So I am kind of you still need the first-party data. The synthetic data is the amplification of what you already know works. When you're ready to scale, synthesize the thing that works. So I'm kind of in that first-party data camp. But then again, I'm a podcast host. All right, let's move on. How do you identify founders and vendors who are just riding the AI hype wave versus truly understanding the technology?
Yeah, this is a biggie, because in our shop, we're constantly on the hunt for and hiring kick-ass founders and engineers. There are, to your point, a number of posers out there, talk, right? They read the latest blog post, or they're on Twitter, and they're just kind of getting the buzzword under their belt, but they're not actually going to the shed. So the first thing we look for is, like, Are you going to the shed? Are you learning these new frameworks? Are you prototyping and building against them? Are you actively using, to our earlier topic, are you actively using it, right? Or are some other people doing it for you? No. You've got to embrace these new technologies in an up close and personal. Part of the thing that matters there the most, we find, is curiosity, right? Some engineers especially are just less curious, about these new things. They want to stick to the mac and cheese and the thing they did the prior 20 years. Oh my God. I don't know how these folks cross over, particularly in the context where you have companies like Microsoft and Meta and others saying that they plan to lay off 30-40% of their mid-level engineering staff within the coming years, 1 or 2 years. So if you're out there and you're a builder of one of these kinds of systems, you've got to be tooling up. You've got to stay curious. You've got to be ambitious enough to repot yourself, right?
Yeah.
And learn these new methods.
Yeah, it's interesting. I understand that obviously you want people that have the experience, that have already done it. But it's really hard right now to have people that have done it because everything is moving so quickly. So I think that part of this is like, a little bit of it is like, if you can talk the talk, you could probably figure it out as well as anybody else can. So I imagine that it's very hard to figure out who are the snake oil salesmen and who actually found gold. Part of this new technology, and mostly because the interface is so text-based and even chat-based, you just have to sit there and fumble with it until you find something that works, and then all of a sudden you have data. It's like the interface is so much easier that almost anybody could do it. It's got to be really hard to figure out who actually is effective as opposed to who is just a talker.
Well, it is tricky, Ben, and I'm not going to tell you that we nail every one of these, but I think my crew and I have gotten pretty good at discerning the snake oil salesman from the true builders for real, right? And the main question is, we're sitting at a whiteboard in the room like the one I'm in right now, and we put people like, no, diagram it out. Teach me exactly how that worked. And if they just sprinkle some buzzword and arrows pointing nowhere in a make-believe picture, then we know they're full of shit.
Yeah.
The ones who can actually, give us a systems kind of view as to how things work together without necessarily on every last little piece. That's the other thing for builders of systems. When these LLMs can write a huge amount of your code, it really elevates the systems thinkers who can think architecturally about how all the pieces hang together.
You just took the words out of my mouth. I don't think you have to be an artificial intelligence expert to be an expert at using artificial intelligence. I think you have to be a great, whatever you are, a great systems thinker, right? A great engineer, a great copywriter, a great business analyst. If you are that, then artificial intelligence, if you mess with it enough, you'll know when you're getting the right response. I'm a pretty good content creator. I understand when I am using artificial intelligence and writing my prompts and doing my research, what is actually good research, what that looks like, and then how to systematize it. Systematize it? That's almost a word. How to use it in a system to get it to reproduce and use it consistently. Doesn't mean I'm an LLM expert. Doesn't mean I understand how that part works, but I understand the process of what I do well. And I think that is an example that most people, you don't have to be an AI expert. You just have to be an expert.
I think that's exactly right. We've said, if you have an extra $6 to $8 billion burning a hole in your pocket, you want to build a new LLM, right? Go for it. But our general view is leave the science of LLMs to the Anthropics and OpenAIs of the world. Be all about the engineering of AI, right? Use these systems to create new systems, right? And by the way, some people have wondered, well, should that you guys, right? We're engineers who build on top of those systems, and that we're barely in the first inning of that, right? That's where the money's at. And that's why, to your earlier example about a verticalized AI application company, that's where the smart money is. and coming into the large LLMs, the perplexities and so on in the world, like some of them are going to win. And if you can write a large enough check such that you could own, a non-trivial percentage of one of those companies, good on you. But again, from my perspective, that's not really where the biggest opportunities lie.
2 more points for Yellow Pad. All right, moving on to our last question. This is a tough one. Has the AI marketing hype cycle peaked, or are we still in an upward trajectory? Let me say it again. Has the AI marketing hype cycle peaked, or are we still in an upward trajectory?
I think we are still in an upward trajectory, approaching that saddle point that takes us into the drop of despair. I don't think we're on the downside of that curve yet, Ben. The reason I say that is because there hasn't been enough, we don't have enough clear organizing distinctions even that help us understand what really constitutes an agentic AI system, for example. Everyone is just making it up. Again, exciting, and we like to play that game, but I don't think that there's enough of a clear framework even for understanding and taxonomizing types of systems and the types of ways in which you build AI. You were talking, for example, earlier about the different tools that you use to create an AI-first podcast studio. There's not like a master agent that does all of that for you. It's I think of what you were describing as a compound AI system where you're using bits and pieces of different tools, right? Well,
True.
that's for real. That's valuable. That's some distance away still, as all of these systems are, from true autonomy, right?
Yeah.
True hands-free, have the agent go do the thing while I go to sleep or have a martini. We're far away from that.
I think we're in the first inning. We're in the foothills. We're not quite at base camp, but we're still, in our first lift line of the day, going up the mountain to ski down. It is early. And, we talked about being a production company and the different ways that I use AI to pre-production and post-production editing and marketing and research and guest analysis, all the different places where it's great. I'm integrating artificial intelligence into the way that we work. But I think at some point, agentic AI becomes smart enough, and also, I don't even know what to call it, engineering AI, right? Where I can be an efficient engineer, rule sets for the system that I've built, now go automate the process. The notion of using AI to help with the last mile work is great, and that's where we are now. Eventually, it's going to be doing some touch points. Fundamentally, it's going to be building the infrastructure for us. It'll be the code language we use, and anybody can use it. And so I think that we are far off from the end of the hype cycle personally.
I'm with you. 100%.
All right. Wonderful. Tom, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing your experience. And look, it's an evolving topic. I'd love to have you back on the show and talk a little bit more about AI as it continues to develop. And that wraps up this episode of the MarTech Podcast. Thanks to Tom Chavez, the co-founder and general partner at Superset, for joining us. If you'd like to contact Tom, you could find a link to his LinkedIn profile, which is in our show notes, or on martechpod.com, or you could visit his company website, which is superset.com. You can also find Tom on his podcast, which is Closed Session. All right. If you haven't subscribed yet and you want a daily stream of marketing and technology knowledge in your podcast feed, hit the subscribe button in your podcast app or on YouTube, and we'll be back in your feed next week. Okay, that's it for today. But until next time, my advice is to just focus on keeping your customers happy.